Hello YouTube and welcome back to the Wellbeing Desk. This is where we're going to look at the research and the model and give a slight analogy into how we look at the perceptions of employer and employee perceptions on wellbeing. So this is basically the highlights of the research, and I'm going to start with the employee perspective codes. This was done on just over 80 employees within the UK government legal department, and the top three that was discussed was very much around work-life balance as a matter of importance, trust within that organisation, so feeling like they are trusted within the workplace to complete their work in what they do, so that fit in with the autonomy in the way that they approach their work, but also it's making sure that the employer can trust an individual as well. Top-down wellbeing initiatives were also important to employees, meaning it links with visible leadership, and one example that came from that was very much around how an employer had spoken out about their own mental health, which allowed others to feel safe in doing so as well, and really coming together as a collective to support one another, which also helps when it comes to mental health first aid trainers. So that again allows there to be a safe space to really open and communicate with leaders and managers. And as you can see, there are other perception codes, so if you just click pause, you can have a little read on those that were also spoken about within some of the focus groups and surveys as well. So just to reiterate, some of the conversations that happened during the focus groups and also questionnaires was very much around the trust. So organisational culture, a safe environment to have open conversations and really feeling listened to as opposed to being told what to do. Support was very much about leaders actually having training, so mental health first aid training, and really ensuring that each leader and manager knows how to have open conversations with their staff. That was really important to each employee, as well as middle leaders as well. Work-life balance, as we mentioned before, but that really delves into the individual needing to feel supported, and so they can actually open up about their individual wellbeing needs, and that needs to prioritise some of the necessary needs that people need outside of work as well. And then a leading approach, so making sure that you've actually got action and open communication from managers around the wellbeing initiatives across the company. That was really important from an employee perspective. This is now a summary of the employer perception code. So that was very much around how the employers perceived the organisational culture. So integrating wellbeing culture throughout the veins of the organisation was really important from an employer perspective. They believe in mental health and wellbeing initiatives, which was really positive to hear. Interestingly, it was then discussed around the individual responsibility. So if that employer or that organisation creates a safe culture for people to have open communication, it was then found that individuals need to have that responsibility to have open communication, take ownership, make sure they have self-awareness and self-reflection to then communicate their well-being needs so that they are being supported. Mental health training was really important from the employer perception. That's then leaders taking action and making sure they've got the right support and training for employees, which was really positive. And then employer priorities, so having that visibility, that visible leadership was really important from an employer perspective. So making sure that they are investing in things like wellbeing champions across the company, making sure that they've got that visible impact on culture and how they drive wellbeing initiatives across the company. And it was really good to hear that a lot of communication is done online, in person, during meetings at every point, and that's something that we want to embed across all organisations to make sure that it actually is a priority from an employer's perception. So what were the similarities? How can we really come together from an employee perspective and an employer? This is very much around the fact that both completely agreed around health and wellbeing champions. So if you don't have those, probably best that you do. Mental health training, again, there's loads of charities that offer this for free, and there's always courses that are available, so please do look at local charities because it really supports that evidence that the wellbeing culture is there if there are champions in place and there is mental health training in place to make sure that people are actually supported. Work pressures was a big one, so it's again understanding workload, it's having those check-ins from a work perspective, and again that individual needs to feel that they can express any concerns or challenges that they are facing, just in case they feel that work is too much, or if they need to have those open conversations, which is where the culture really fits in to make sure that each individual is not going to burn out. Individualised wellbeing was also spoken highly about from both the employer and employees. From an employee perspective, this again came from the middle leaders, that they do tend to take on more work because they're trying to be a supportive leader, but that then comes back down to that work pressure and the responsibility of that person because they feel that they need to keep working because they are a middle leader, for example. So that again comes back down to the individualised wellbeing of how we can create positive cultures across the organisation, whether you are an employer, chief exec at the top, SLT, senior leadership team, middle leaders, or if you are an employee of a company. We are all one, and we have to be on that same level of communication when it comes to culture and the wellbeing in the workplace. So if you just want to pause again there, then you'll be able to have a look at some of the other codes that were discussed within the focus groups and the questionnaires. And in total, this was with 140 employers and employees. So this is to all the skiers out there. We have found that across organisations, not just the one that I researched on, is that there is a gap between the communication that we have between employers and employees and their perceptions on wellbeing interventions. So I want you to think about a skier. And as we know, a skier has one ski for the right foot and one ski for the left foot. Let's say that the employer is the left ski and the employee is the right ski, and the goal is to stop safely down a black slope. So let's imagine that we're skiing in the beautiful French Alps for now. Both the employer and the employee need to work together in order to break the force between stopping and potentially falling over. So if they don't work together parallel in order to stop, then there might be some sort of conflict or perhaps some sort of break in force, and then that essentially means that they're not working very well together if you fall. But if you stop successfully, that means that there's no gap. That means they've worked really well together and they've succeeded in breaking a very, very large snowplow, perhaps. Meaning, if there's too much of a gap between the employer and the employees in terms of communication, working together, making sure you've got the right wellbeing initiatives in place, then your organisation might look a little bit like this. Oh, this way. So if we're not working together, then your organisation might feel toxic. You might have a very inward mindset. There might be conflict between employers and employees, or managers and employees, and maybe employees against employees. We all have been there or worked in a place that has some sort of toxicity. Now that leads us to burnout. It means that staff retention is not going to be great. It means there's a lack of self-esteem, trust, communication, which then means you may have unsuccessful performance outcomes. And we don't want that. We want to close that gap. We want to make sure that there's no gap between the employer and the employee, or employees as well. That's a different set of research, by the way. But if we don't work together, meaning communicate, we risk these obstacles, okay? I can't stop watching this GIF. So what is it that you can actually do? As a result from the research and the perception codes from both the employer and the employee, it came about that there are gaps, and we want to try and make sure that there's no gaps between the employer and the employees. And that means if there isn't, then we thrive at work. We don't fall down the slope. We can stop together if we work together in parallel. So that means that from a top-down employer influence on well-being, that means creating organisational culture and investment, communicate in the loop from surveys, the staff surveys. If you don't have surveys, make sure you get them, external preferably. Recruitment and competencies, make sure you've got the right people in post in the first place. Otherwise, if you've got one bad egg, it's going to affect the rest of your team. Effective people management, make sure that there's training for leaders and managers. Health and wellbeing champions, that was a massive priority, and it really does set the organisational culture. Performance reviews, meaning CPD, that means regularly checking in with your employees to make sure that they are not suffering in silence because they feel inadequate at their job. It means that you are willing to offer them training, support and development to fulfill their role, which again means successful organisational outcomes. Leader work pledges, again, make sure that you are visibly showing any sort of wellbeing interventions. You are showcasing that overworking isn't good, because work-life balance is really important to each individual. Wellbeing action plan and strategy, making sure you communicate that, make sure it actually exists. If you don't have one, get one, and make sure that it is spoken about at least once a week or every day, even better. And then from an employee expectation on wellbeing, it was found that you have to have mental health first aiders. They need to feel like they can have open conversations with their managers. They need to have a positive mindset and self-awareness. That again came from the individuals and employees, which was also an expectation of employers to also fulfill that. Resilience and self-action, again making sure that you've got a safe environment to do that. There was then something called the Wellbeing Confident Leaders. This actually was new for me. Again, it is having additional champions to really make sure that we have wellbeing initiatives coming from leaders and managers, which showcases that they are being trained on having supportive conversations. Work-life balance and quality of life, it means something to everybody, whether you're an employer or employee. It's really important. So again, family comes first. That's something that we are really big on in the organisation that I work in. Individual competencies and trust. And then lastly, peer wellbeing support and buddying up. So having that workplace support within, it tends to be free, it's easily done, it just needs to be there within the culture. You can learn a lot from people, but it needs to be embedded and spoken about to a degree. There's definitely things that are missing here as well, but this is just what came from the research and the perception codes. So you might need things that are different, and you might want to have something that is more bespoke and tailored to you. So please just drop me an email if that's something that you're looking for. And then I'm hoping that you actually got something from that, because I think there's so many presentations and so many different things that are out there, but essentially, what is it that you're going to actually do? Let's say that on Monday, a fresh week, what are you going to actually bring into the organisation? Even if you just talk about it, that is a great step. So what 3 things are you going to do? What are you going to take away from your organisation, whether you're going to look from an employer's perspective, an employee perspective? There's loads on there that you can just start having those conversations, or really embedding some more of the more difficult things to really change that culture. But as long as we're starting somewhere, that is great. And please do comment, please do share what you are going to do just from looking at this presentation or having the conversations as well internally. I'd really like to hear it. Be the change. So, if you are an employee, if you are an employer, make sure you speak up, you just be the change within that organisation, whether it's you that's actually the positive one, the one that is always lifting other people, the one that can really see things in a more positive light, that's great. So ultimately, at the end of this, just be the change in your organisation, and hopefully we can start working towards a really positive company culture so that people can thrive and feel that their well-being and work-life balance is being prioritised.